Hello and welcome to the first installment of Three Questions Minneapolis, a series designed to amplify and archive the voices of Black protesters in Minneapolis and St. Paul in the wake of the tragic death of George Floyd. I want to keep this intro really brief, so the series is going to basically be me walking around different active protest sites and interviewing people of color, asking them three very open questions, which are, what has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both good and bad? What change are you fighting for while protesting? And what would you like to tell people outside Minneapolis and St. Paul about these protests? Every interview in this episode was recorded with consent at 38th and Chicago, the site of where George Floyd was killed. So I hope this brings some good into the world. I hope it brings some insight maybe to those who don't exactly know what's going on. And I hope the people who I interviewed really do feel like there are people out there who care and want their voice to be heard, because there are. I encourage you to do whatever you can, however you can, to help this cause if you have the means. Black Lives Matter, and please enjoy this episode and the messages of the people out here living during these protests. What has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both good and bad?
Well, unfortunately, the damage to the community is horrible. I'm all for speaking up and peacefully protesting, but damaging the community is definitely unacceptable. There's the elder community that needs groceries and medicine, and it's unfortunate that there's a lot of people that's outside of the community coming here and causing a lot of destruction. But the good thing is that there are people out here supporting, that are outside of the community supporting this, which is always a good sign that America is evolving.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, second question. What change specifically are you fighting for while protesting?
Well, I don't really see too much change. Hopefully that the police, the city holds the police accountable, and maybe there is some change in policy, maybe even a change in how we could actually self-police our communities. Maybe this is an opportunity for some more companies to get some contracts for the city to protect our own, because obviously we've been dependent on the city or the police department to uphold their promise to protect us, and they haven't been, holding up their end of the stick. So,
thank you. Okay, this is the last question. What would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about these protests?
I would like to tell them that they need to come and contribute peacefully, and if they really care, they would bring items, maybe food, donations. They can get out here in the front lines and, they can come back and clean up. They can come up and help build the community, not just protest and hold signs up. Let's actually do something to make a change. Let's get out here and lobby. If you're rich, if they got connections and use their connections, we definitely need to make some type of change.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with me.
All right, thank you.
Would you like to answer the questions as well? Okay, no problem.
Well, I just want to thank you for the interview, and if anybody was looking for some special treats, you can reach us at Liddy Sweets, LITTY SWEETZ. That's Liddy Sweets on Facebook. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead once I get this first episode all edited out. We're gonna post it on YouTube. I'm gonna make its own YouTube page, and of course do the hashtags so everybody can find it. Okay. Thank you again for talking to me. I really appreciate it. All right, again, this is completely anonymous. I just have 3 quick questions for you. First of all, thank you very much for sharing your experience. I will not ask your name or any other personal information. Do you give me permission to record and publish this interview?
Yes.
Beautiful. All right, question number 1. I won't edit any of this. It'll be straight. All right. Question number 1. What has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both good and bad?
Well, what I want to say is, man, it's like, hey, it was first-hand eyes. I want to say first eyes seeing it to see what was done. And, yeah, it wasn't good. And I'm hoping that they bring this to a conclusion of what they need to do for not just the one officer that figured that he was the only one, but every other officer that was there on the scene. And I say that because they have a rule in the law is if you and I and another guy did some bull jive, but somebody got shot and killed, even though I didn't do it or you didn't do it, we're going to be charged with that same murder. So that's what I feel about that. And but everybody's eyes is open to that. See, it's not just, the meteor that's going out that catches things, but now everybody got a camera that catches things. And we have to hold those guys accountable for what they do, as you're going to hold me accountable for what I do. So that's what I feel about that.
Awesome. Thank you. Second question. What change specifically are you fighting to see while protesting?
Well, what I feel right now is what everybody's doing is coming together. No matter what nationality you is, it's only one race, and that's the human race. It doesn't matter the picnic of your skin or color or whatever, your hairstyle or whatever it is. We are all one race, and we should all be treated that way. So don't separate us. Everybody's included, just as if you had a pot with nothing but all kind of mixed vegetables, and when you scoop that out of that pot, you're gonna still get mixed vegetables. So we still gonna all continue to be here as one race. That's what I gotta say about that one.
Wonderful. And I just have one more question, and thank you again very much. What would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about these protests and this movement?
Hey, it's been a hardcore thing here, man, to see things not just start here at Minnesota. I mean, we done became on the map now twice with the football, and now it's something that really touch home. But this is not just here in Minnesota. This is all over of America. And the president of the United States of America is a joke. I'm gonna say that. You sending army men to fight people from America. They're not supposed to be doing this. When we send our troops out, we go out of our country to fight for other people. Now you sending them to us to fight our own people. And those people that coming out to fight us have family out here doing the fight for this justice. And that's the reason they took an oath to hold an oath to protect America. So a lot of those guys should be doing that kneeing. I understand about the flag, but we have to knee and see what this flag is really standing for. If it's standing for America, then let it stand for America. So that's how I feel. The president is a joke. I don't even call him president. I call him Donald Trump. That $1 trillion that they got and spent it all over on the billions of the millionaires, trillionaires, and give us, what, $2, $12? I call it $12. You know what I'm saying? $1,200. That's just $12 because it's gone like that. So that's what I'm gonna have to say about America. And I think even though, everybody's not hating the police and things like that, we standing up for, hey, they can't keep getting away with what they're doing in our eyes. It's a joke. But if you're doing it just for black people, but no, you gotta, hey, look, white people standing up for this. Because now we're united. And that's what a united is coming together as one. So that's how I feel about that.
Well, right on. Well, thank you so much for sharing with me. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
My name is Mr. Gibbs, and I'm a local comedian.
Okay, do you want that to be on the record?
Oh, yes, put that out there because I want somebody to know my name, Mr. Gibbs.
Okay, we'll definitely do that then.
Comedian, that is. So when all this is over, come on out and let's laugh about a lot of this we done got into.
Beautiful. Well put. Thank you very much. All right, first off, thank you for sharing your experience. I will not ask your name or any other personal information. Do you give me permission to record our interview?
I do.
First question, what has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both good and bad?
The protests themselves have been outstanding. It's been showing unity in the community. I'm not from here. I've only been here less than a year. But to see the protests and to be actively a part of the protests from the first day, the marches and the rallies, the good part about it is that I see a great diversity. People back home where I'm from, they don't see that it's a mixture of ethnicities and cultures and genders out here. The media has shown one side. That's the negative. I was out there at the 3rd Precinct. I was a part of the protest where it was extremely peaceful until we were targeted, literally targeted by the police with rubber bullets, gas. We weren't doing anything. We were standing literally across the street by Target and we were being shot at. So that's the negative. That's the downside. In my opinion, I can't be 100% sure, but based on that experience that we had out there on day 2 of the protest and march, that agitated a peaceful protest and turned peaceful protesters into a rage state. And I'm not saying that's excusable, but I think that's where everything kind of got out of hand.
Great. Second question, what change specifically are you fighting for while out protesting?
In systematic racism. I'm glad that people around the world are aware. I'm glad that people are more conscious today. I just hope 30 days from now, 45 days from now, they understand that it's more than just George Floyd. It's more than just Sandra Bland. It's more than just Eric Gardner, Trayvon Martin. The list goes on and on. Breonna Scott and her fiance or boyfriend is actually being charged for murder for protecting himself when police raided their home. So it goes beyond that. And the thing that I say time and time again that the only thing that's different from today than it was in the 60s and 70s is the convenience of technology. It's a video that people saw that sparked the outrage. But black people have been going through this, indigenous people, brown people, Hispanic people have been going through this every single day since they've been here in America's soil.
Great. Okay, I just have one last question for you, and that is, what would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about these protests?
That the protests are peaceful. There are, whatever those forces are doing negative, there are few people, a very small percentage that are looting and rioting, but that's not the whole story. I have footage just like you probably witnessed yourself that shows every protest that I've been to has been peaceful from the protester standpoint, but defensive and reactionary due to the police's aggressiveness. But that's really what I want America to see, is that the pictures that have been portrayed that maybe aggravate other police officers in other cities and other states to act out and lash out against protesters. Don't let the media sway what's really going on here. I mean, this is actually unity. I haven't been out here at this spot one day yet, and I haven't seen any altercations. Protested downtown. The only altercation I saw was the police officers drive by, pepper spraying just civilians standing in the street. I haven't seen any violence at any of the rallies or protests I've been to, except for the engagement when police are agitating the crowd. And that's what I want to say. It's more than just what the media is portraying. It's peaceful. it's peaceful. Minneapolis is coming together. Minnesota's coming together. The Twin Cities are coming together, and that's really what I want everybody to understand and see.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing this with me.
Sure, yes.
Okay, great. Question number 1, what has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both good and bad?
So we've been out here and participating with at least 3 organized protest rallies since. The second day, my negative, I guess, would be, well, let me start with a positive. My positive initially was seeing the unity. My husband and I, it's close to a year since we relocated from Houston, Texas. And the warmth that we received, more so on our business side, has been great. We were still kind of getting our feet wet in the community, so to speak, and then this happened. But to see the rally of community unified with our march from here to the 3rd Precinct Police Station was beautiful. And I'm talking all different race, ethnicity, nationalities coming together. The negative, I'll say the highest point of the negative was when we were fired upon by officers on the roof. Seeing mothers out here pregnant, their small children, babies in carriage strollers that were being fired upon when clearly nothing was initiated by the crowd. That is what sparked some anger. And that in itself was truly disheartening. It was scary, and it's pretty unfortunate because it changes the narrative. The media can't pick up everything. However, they do tend to sometimes highlight what they could find, I guess, that would be intriguing for viewers, which would be the negative for starters. And so it almost gave Minneapolis a bad name. Of course, family and friends that we have back home were calling almost in a panic, worried about our safety because the aspect of how the media was reporting it as far as us looting and rioting and that type of thing. So I'm so glad that that's kind of coming, the clarity of that is somewhat coming into fruition here in the later days. But yeah, that would be my positive and my negative.
Okay. Well, also, I'm from Texas too, so small world, right? Welcome. I wish it were different. But okay, my second question would be, what specifically are you fighting for during these protests? What would you like to see change?
So I'm one that has love for all who has love for all people. I am a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 2 boys and a girl. And I'm definitely a friend. I truly believe that your family is not always of blood, per se. And I feel if you're not one that believes that, then it puts you in a very small, enclosed realm of life. And that's unfortunate. So feeling as blessed that I am, at the same time, I'll say I don't feel so blessed speaking as a multiracial woman here in America. We have come far, but we have not overcome. So I would like to see systematic change in regards to what our future holds, not just for my African American community, but for all of us, because for anyone who cares, who's concerned, that was affected, not just with George Floyd's murder, but Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, who was only 12 years old, Trayvon Martin. It's happening over and over and over. And so I'm hoping that everyone will stand up. After the noise stops, I hope that the push for justice does not stop. And however that looks for each individual, whether it means that you do it in solidarity, you paint an art picture to keep it alive, you start a mission to, even if you never have before, or if you always have, continue to contact your state legislatures, your congressmen, your senators, get involved with your community leaders, your community activists. Everything is not of violence. Things are very well organized, and I don't think a lot of our people, especially the younger Z generation example, know that particularly. But I also am not discounting the ones that protest, the ones who do come to a physical fight sometimes, because it is your right to defend yourself, just as we saw on the second day of protest, which was started out very peaceful. These things have to happen. I feel if the protesting hadn't happened in the way that it did and the fight back, we would not have even received the news that we just got of today with all 4 of the officers being charged.
And thank you for mentioning that on tape. That's breaking news that just happened today on June 3rd. All 4 officers have been charged. I only have one more question for you, and it's, what would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about the protest?
So, of course, we don't want to break down our neighborhoods. That's the first thing. So, looting, fighting, burning down things, whatever you do, however that looks for you in your fight for justice, for all, let it be for all. And do it out of the kindness of your heart, and do it intelligently. Because in the end, when it's all said and done, if we tear everything apart physically, if we tear things down, then we're only defeating ourselves. We're only defeating the mission at hand.
You know,
Beautifully put.
what happened, how I was powerless to do something. You know, I don't know no protocol how you get officers off somebody that's dying, you know? So I was a witness here, you know, personally, you know what I'm saying? And I haven't came forward and talked to them, but that's definitely going to occur. But the con to it is that, well, because I live near Lake Street, well, a block off Lake Street, and the heart of this, no, only if you hold your brother's hand and your brother's with you. It's just it's sad that the people are looting and rioting, but I can tell that the organizers of peaceful protests have been trying to alter their routes in real time to kind of detour themselves or decipher them from the actual looters and rioters. But I've noticed some of those things have occurred, and the National Guard and the police haven't taken advantage of being able to identify the separate the separate groups, you know. And so that's been the con. But I mean, this is honestly has turned into a very positive thing. Far as it's a negative experience, but it's turning positive. It's kind of like funerals, you know. If your family you don't see in a while, you kind of get a little camaraderie with them as the tragedy goes on, and that's kind of what this is. Because honestly, I done became closer to my people on my block than any neighborhood or national night out ever. Because it's turned into a national night out kind of thing because of the organization we have to do to protect the blocks from where the rioters are going and coming and so on. So it's definitely a tragedy that has blossomed many positives.
Wonderful. Second question would be, what specifically are you fighting to see change during these protests?
I would just see the protocol and procedure on how you handle people in general, like, you know, mental ill, like a lot of these deaths, you know, some of these people we've been told were mentally ill over the last few years. They got other systemic things going on where maybe that need to be, you know, more addressed, you know what I'm saying, more training. Like it needs to just be maybe a total different protocol for people that are, you know, in those situations, you know, because like, again, I was here. I can tell you when the man from when it happened to him to when that happened, we talking about 35, 40 minutes. So I don't know if that man really thought he did a crime. Because, like, he set up here. The police pulled him out. He said, I didn't know it was fake. But y'all don't see that on the tapes y'all see. You don't got no audio, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of stuff that happened where from how it started to how it ended, it don't surprise me because I know how it started. Them video don't tell you. There's a lot of stuff missing off them tapes.
Sure.
Or we can say there's tapes they're going to release later. Let's say that. There's tapes they're going to release later.
All right, and last quick question. What would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about the protest here?
This is a overall 90% positive protest. It's very evident due to what our governors communicated that the people they're arresting for, the destruction and things are not from Minnesota. You know what I'm saying? This is a state that love nature, you know what I'm saying? And I think this event made people that maybe didn't want to be on the front line, it kind of forced them to. And people that was like, thinking about I need to do more, it was that tipping point that made them say, I'm finna do more now. You know what I mean? So like, yeah. I'm grateful and thankful for all the people that kept coming out, and I just keep thanking them, because it's real. And I just hate that brother had to lose his life. But I just hope it brings systematic change, you know what I'm saying? And and a lot of the thing with the looters too, man, like that's economic racism playing itself out. I mean, think about it. I wasn't out there stealing Jordans, but again, I got a job that's a livable wage. You know what I'm saying? I make $28 an hour at my job starting. You know what I'm saying? So I ain't got no purpose to go out there taking, you know what I'm saying? I like earning it and going to buy it. You know what I mean? So like, that was another piece. It's just not all these rules and policies. Just think about how America would look different if we had universal health care right now. Just that little piece. You know what I'm saying? This COVID thing would look different. This whole thing would look different. You know what I mean? I just hope it bring more people together as clearly is, Because I promise you, I've been in this hood like him my whole life. I ain't never seen this many white people. Hell no. When I was a youth and becoming a kid, this is one of the areas all the white people was moving out of. Because Central neighborhood is one of the neighborhoods where the first black person bought a house in the 60s. The Central neighborhood. That same block that black man bought that house at, 2 blocks down, Prince went to elementary school. You know what I'm saying? A block from there, he went to high school. You know what I mean? In our lifetime. So yeah, this happened in the Central neighborhood and the city acting like this, they should, because everybody got some loved ones or someone with some passion and some spirituality that they know from this neighborhood. And this is what they do to give back. Went right to the 3rd precinct. They know. I don't know what Amy Klobuchar gonna do, because the next turn of events is gonna just expose her for not doing a lot of stuff that she could, because a lot of this stuff was happening under her watch. You know what I mean? Like, for real.
And for people out of state who might not know, could you say what Amy Klobuchar's position is?
She was the prosecutor for the city of Minneapolis prior to her becoming a U.S. Senator. So we talking about, 06 and beyond, I mean, before, When, even this Derek guy that killed somebody under her watch, she let him out. The last person he killed him in their bathroom, and somehow he got off for that under her watch. I mean, we can go back as far as the incident where, politically, when she was running for office, there was this article about this guy that killed this kid. This stray bullet killed this kid, and they were talking about how that dude was not given justice and how that worked out. Even in that, there's an interview, there's a story where the police is interrogating him and they're interviewing him. We talking about 1998. In the interview, he says, "Hey man, if y'all don't believe where I was at, go check the video at Cup." That's 98. 2020. Look what we're dealing with. 98, it was something like that. Really, we can go check a video in Cup and verify you? I mean, for real, a lot of justice now. For real. That story needs to go.
Well, thank you very much for sharing with me. I really do appreciate it. And again, would you like to say your name one more time for the record?
Derek Armstrong, live and direct from the Central green neighborhood in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Peace and blessings to all y'all. Let freedom reign, justice, freedom, and equality.
First of all, I have to get this out of the way. Thank you very much for talking with me. I do have to ask permission for me to record this interview and publish it. Do you give me consent?
Yes, my name is Kenneth Hart, and I give you consent to publish.
Beautiful, thank you. My first question is, I made the same mistake. I didn't have my phone out with my questions. What has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both good and bad?
It opens a door to acknowledgement of self. It gives me a reason to set myself apart from people who don't have the understanding of what's going on in Black lives. And it's not just about us, it's about human race and us being set apart from one another for so long and not having the option to communicate as human beings. And when you go through these certain situations, it shows you that we have a long way to go, but yet we have the option to do so. And we should not look at this as something that just started, but something that has been here for centuries. Okay, but what I really want to understand is, how can we not see when we already know that if we do not come together as a people, that this will continue because we have no dialogue with one another. And it starts as a people. We got to stop putting this into the politicians and the people who have power hands, because they're saying that they're Jesus Christ and they're not. God lives in us all. We all are individuals, and it takes a community to protect the community. And what we're seeing now is God is real. When you take him out of the equation, you see, the only thing that can defeat darkness is the light. And if there's two things that you can choose in your life, you can be bad or you can be good. And if you choose the bad, then of course, things like this gonna happen. But we have to have some kind of balance. Otherwise, why will we know the difference between the value of what being right is? You understand what I'm saying? When you're wrong, it's just giving you what you need to know when you're moving in the right direction. We can't put too much into it, because we will lose the process of knowing what we are moving about in the first place. So we start crowding all this other stuff in there, man. Hey, look, it's simple. We already came together already. We already defeated it. We did it. But what are we going to do from this point? Do we take this and inject it into our everyday schedule? Because that's the only way we're going to keep it. Otherwise, it just becomes some glorified concert. And it's a repeated offense against humanity that we all know it could be changed. As individuals, we have to start with self, man. If we don't start with self, if you love yourself, then of course you can receive the love from someone else. You respect yourself, then you're going to respect others and receive that same respect back. You see what I'm saying? The people who are doing what they're doing is because they were raised that way. This country was raised off supremacy, and we know that. Black people were looked at as property. We were not looked at as human beings, 3/4 of a being. So when you put that in action, you have to change the policies. Therefore, you change the mishaps on what's going on in the world. So then you will have a strong identity in the power to move forward, because it's written down. You know what I'm saying? And that's how we move. And then next to that is the individual knowing who he is as a person. Thank you, sir. Hey, yes, sir. Then you would know who you are. Look, let's keep it real. Man, it's going to keep happening until we stop it. Seriously. You cannot blame someone without blaming yourself, because if you're not a part of the solution, you're a part of the problem. Okay? You have a voice. Each and every last human being on the planet has a voice. How do we change that? We must look inside ourselves, say, what is our purpose? What is our meaning for even being born? When you look into that, you start there. What you do from there, it just spreads out, just like throwing a pedal into a pond. Now, the deeper you go, the wider the explosion, the wider the wave. Everything will spread out. It takes love to defeat evil.
That's actually a great segue into my second question, which is, what specifically are you fighting to see change during the protest?
I'm fighting me, fighting myself. That's how I change. Because in that, me conquering myself, others can see in that same position on how they can change themselves. We all walk that same line. We all do wrong, we all do right. So you can't point to a person. See, God says, he who is without sin cast the first stone. Who here on the planet can cast the first stone? Nobody. Nobody. You do things that nobody see you do. You know you've done something that's really, really bad. You understand what I'm saying? Stop using this as a point. See, he just got caught with his hands in the cookie jar. That's all it is. But God uses that perception to change for the better. So you can change anything. Perception is key. You take that, what happened, because everything happens for a reason. Stop trying to capitalize on the innocent or what you know is good. When we come into this world, we are all innocent. When you do bad, that is something that is taught. This is something that is taught, brother. You wasn't born bad. So until we come together as a species and understand the options that we have to make things better, the only way human beings are going to evolve is to move past the things that were before us. See, we are not our ancestors. Hell, this is a millennium. This is 2020 now. I stand with the kids. See, I failed. I'm 50 plus up. You know, people my age and up, we failed because these are our kids out here. So you get mad when things like this happen. You can't do that because it's going to happen regardless. Because if good people don't step up, then this is going to continue to happen, and it's going to get a lot worse. As human beings, man, it's bigger than this. We think like we're so primitive. Stop this. I can't understand it when you already know the answer to it. You're not going to treat me. See, how I failed was I knew the guy, and instead of me sharing my experiences being the only black, see, I'm a union journeyman carpenter, okay? And I've been here, I've been working since 35 years. I've been down here, helped building this beautiful Minnesota. Everybody from around the globe here. When I got here, I was just so fascinated that we were all in the same neighborhood, the same community, man. This place is awesome. And for people to look at a situation and try to base this on that, I'm a black man. And I stood and I worked with the Ku Klux Klan. I've worked with the good old boys and the 49ers. And because of people that are good and been raised and been properly taught how to handle certain situations, is how I changed people's understanding of what they thought was the truth, and then they checked their ignorance. That's how you defeat it. Every day you wake up in the morning, you see a person, you say, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Whether that person is angry or not, that did something. That made a person feel like somebody actually cares, man. You take the policies of the life that has been written by people before us. That's all it is. It's nobody's fault. It's just time to change. And if we don't change it, you already know the inevitable. This is the outcome of it all. But as you see right now, man, look, we're feeding one another. Of all races are coming together. We have conquered our own understanding of unity. We're already unified. But let's be very, very careful that this does not become just some kind of prize notion of a concert that you glorify. Because all of this stuff is going to be wiped up by water. When it rains, it's going to be done. But what's going to be in our hearts is what's going to dictate where we move from this point now. We got to stand as individuals before we can come together as a unit. That's all. We all have a voice. And like I said before, people have no right in moving in such a way without even asking that man how he felt. That man came down here because he believed in lives. He believed in protecting others. Man, the man was an awesome person, but he came from an all-black world like I did. We were broken. Genocide was up here. See, my own people, we kill each other, so we don't need nobody to help us. We already know how to burn down our own lives and kill each other, but that's not what we're about. We all were chosen to be light bearers, and it's time for the warriors of the light to take command and take that front line and stand up under God, because you take God out of the equation, we're going to lose anyway. But do believe that he is real. If this is not God, then what is he? We were created out of love, man. And I just like to say, man, I love human beings, man, but God has chosen America, the United States, to reflect and protect the globe. What we show each other, what we show the world, because they are watching, what we show the world right now is how everybody is going to fall into place. You don't have to do anything but respect yourself. When you move in the light shines. Boy, I'm telling you, it's like a landmine. Everybody catches it. If you walk out, if you negative in the morning time, you walk out and your spirit is negative, guess what? All day long, everything going to bother you, and it's just going to get worse and worse. But if you walk out with a positive, and understand itself and move in a way of righteousness, guess what? It's going to do just the same. Nothing beats the darkness like the light.
Well, I love that you brought up the community earlier and the United States just now. It's another great segue into my final question, which is, what would you like to tell the people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about the protests going on here?
I love Minnesota. I love you, Minnesota, from deep down in my heart. I love every human being on the planet. And I say we have already done it. We're proving it to each other right now, though, that we've done it. We've done it, guys. Pat yourself on the back. What do we do from here? Do we take what we have learned and coming together, or do we fall through the cracks once more? If we don't stand and speak out as a voice, because we all have a voice, every human being, we are one species, guys, it's time to evolve. I love you all. My name is Kenneth Hart. God bless.
Thank you so much for talking to me. I really do appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me. And just a little bit of housekeeping. I do have to ask on the record, do you consent to me recording and publishing this?
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. All right, well then I will jump into our first question, which is, what has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both good and bad?
Well, I've been out here for the whole thing. The sad part is there is, the looting, the thefts and shit that go on along with it. At the same time, burnt down buildings could be rebuilt. That man will never be back here. And I mean, the gracious thing, you can look around and see that there's hundreds of people doing this everywhere in the world, not just in the United States anymore. So that's the beautiful part about it. The bad part is some people don't know how to control their emotions. They can't articulate how they feel, so they take it out by putting the proverbial fist through the wall, which is going through a store, which is stealing from the stores, which is breaking into shit, burning shit down.
Beautiful. And my second question is, what specifically are you fighting to see change through these protests?
Well, we want to see every officer every time. It's good to hear that 4 officers are going to jail, but we want every officer every time. And in fact, they should be held on a higher standard than the citizens of this country because they are protecting us. They need to be held accountable for the abuse of power that is taking place in these videos that we see year after year in the history of this country that nobody speaks of. We want change. They need to be held on a higher accountable standard than just your normal citizens. We don't walk around with guns and army trucks, and we don't have the support that they have. So they need to show more restraint. They need to take a step back instead of pushing people through windows and shit.
Great. And my final question is, what would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about the protests that are happening here in these cities?
If you're not participating, please show some support, because we're not going to stop until the changes that we need are taking effect. We'll be out here every goddamn day.
All right, first of all, thank you very much for talking with me. I do have to get a bit of a housekeeping right out of the way, and that is, do you give me consent to record our interview and publish it?
Actually, yes. We're done. My people, every day, they go and die for no reason. This is what you get. If you try again, this is what you get it. Right now what happening for the world. We need to stop to kill the people. It's for officers, everybody to see what happened. If somebody do something wrong, they can pick up him. Do not kill the people. I want to send a message. All police department, take action for this right now.
Okay, great. So getting into the 3 questions, what has been your experience with the protest following the death of George Floyd, both positive and negative?
Actually, the people that do protest is nice people, but we have group like they are named anti is bad group, a terrorist. They fuck the business. everybody they watch what happened for the news. The people that broke the business is not black people. It's terrorists, you know. And I want to send the people who live to Minneapolis and St. Paul. Everybody's safe.
Okay. And my second question is, what specifically are you fighting to see change during these protests?
We need the justice. We're not gonna stop. We do it everything. We do it everything. We need information. That's why I have it.
Okay, great. And my last question would be, what would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about the protests going on here in these cities?
I want to send my people. You can do protest, but you can't fuck the business. My sister, she have business. Right now it's gone. I want to send the people. If you see somebody doing something wrong, pick up him and fight him and fire him. This is why I want to send the Minneapolis people in St. Paul.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that with me. I really do appreciate it. All right, first off, thank you for sharing your experience. I will not ask your name or any other personal information. Do you give me permission to record and publish this interview?
Absolutely.
Great. I'll just jump right into it then. Question number one is, what has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both positive and negative?
Can I hold the mic? Okay. Well, you know, I've been coming here every day pretty much. Try to come in the morning time. I even came the other day when they had the chemtrails over the store, which was kind of interesting. The chemtrails over the morning sun. But positive, I think the positive is kind of, you know, obvious when you approach this area of South Minneapolis, my neighborhood, which is, you know, you have a large gathering of people who are expressing their care and concern about a tragic death that took place in this neighborhood. You know, a lot of times in Minneapolis, you know, North Minneapolis seems to be the only place that is talked about when you deal with concentrated inequalities that happen in America. But it's interesting, South Minneapolis has always been that. It's always had its historic issues. And it's by no accident that I feel that this particular next tragedy happened in this very location. So yeah, the positive is it's a large gathering of those who are expressing their concern. The negative, right? Yep. The negative is the absolute inconsistency and contradictions of how we all tend to fall asleep in life and worship death. I mean, I work with a lot of kids in this neighborhood, and they don't get this kind of attention when they're doing good while they're living. And when I say kids, I'm talking 17, well, let's just say from 8 years old to 17-year-olds. I don't see any of this with them when they're doing good. I definitely don't see, if I was going to be even more critical, and I'm going to be balanced with my critique, a big presence of what you would call maybe white liberal or progressive white folks who live in this area or outside of the area that come down here when there's blood on the ground, express their solidarity or their concern for pain, but maybe in some situations will be the first people who would deny you access to funding in terms of how dollars are presented to different communities. And when you show up in meetings like that, you almost are treated somewhat like Brother Floyd was when it's time to get the resources, meaning you become a threat while you're living. I can also say that and balance out that critique even with some reactionary black folks who come and scream and shout and dance and do whatever we do in moments of pain, but then when it's time to really put in that work, the real work, which I feel a part of the primary focus should be on, is our youth, to present them more opportunities, more support, more affirmation, more constructive programs to help develop their best selves, I don't really see the passion there for a lot of black folks to even step up while we're living. So, it's a balanced critique. You like to see people definitely triggered by their human emotions, but you want to see those human emotions transferred over to life. And that's what I'm passionate about.
Beautiful. My next question would be, what specifically are you fighting to see change during these protests?
Well, I was fighting for change before the protests. I live in change. I live in things that I just talked about, and that's why I'm critiquing it, because I'm not just saying this in terms of being negative or being non-participatory in how I exercise that. I mean, I'm personally sacrificing, maybe selfish gains, jobs or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Because you see the absolute slow murder taking place every day, man. This is not just about one person. This is about probably some of our most needy human beings that occupy space with us, which is the youth. It's interesting. I've yet to hear any conversation, I don't know if you have or not, but this was an open-air drug block, among other things. You know what I mean? Now, how do our black men get to a point where they could be demonstrating so much brilliance at 12 years old in 4th or 5th grade, and then go to being 18 or 17 years old, maybe like junior in high school on up, and find themselves with the only opportunities is to deal in drug trade, on the street? Where's the business development? Where's the educational support for us, when we attend these public schools? Where is the pre-kindergarten support for mothers, single mothers, or even for families to have relief and support for the kids when they're developing at the most impressionable ages when the brain is still forming? I mean, there's a lot of issues, man. But, the main thing is that when we look at this situation, and as I talk to you right now, we're going to have to make some decisions where our values are. And some of us might have to make decisions that we block away certain opportunities that are maybe designed for ourselves to advance, and use whatever skills, gifts, and talents that we have to advance a more collective. And that's the real work, that's the real sacrifice, and maybe that's even the real story behind all this.
And my last question to you would be, what would you like to say to people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about the protest here and what's going on?
Well, I would say for the people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul that you're dealing with the same thing in your city. For some reason, Minneapolis and St. Paul just happened at the time and place and moment where the same unfortunate tragedy you see in your neighborhoods every day happened here. And for some reason, this has become, due to our own neglect in our own communities, because this was coming. This was coming. This was not by accident. There's been many things that led to this moment in this city and every other city in the country. One thing I will say, too, back on the positive, I'll say that it's good to see the youth out here. When I say youth, I'm talking 25 on down. And I'm talking about the youth who don't give a fuck about what these adults are saying, who's a quote-unquote community leader, who's an entertainer, who's an athlete, who's in media, who's anything. There's a lot of youth that are in pain. There's a lot of youth that are feeling disconnected from adults. There's a lot of youth that are totally isolated from any support at all. And they've been exercising that painful emotion, I feel, all across this city. And so that's another thing, too, in terms of the question that you just asked. I'm sorry if I just added on to that, But what I do appreciate about you and people like ourselves is that you've chosen an independent exercise of documentation, and that's very important. We cannot rely in any way on corporate media's spin to real life experiences because, of course, corporate media, their bottom line is about money. And although this space has somewhat become commodified out of necessity, I think of by the mere urgency of economics in this neighborhood, we have to do this kind of work even when we're not getting paid for it, to tell the stories of the people inside of the movements, not only today, tomorrow, next week, next month, but next year and the years to come. So I appreciate you being a member of the independent press, and I just also ask those who want to tell similar stories or document these times to bring out your cameras, bring out your audio recorders, do every and anything you can do to document history, because this is a part of history right now.
Well, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your insight. That was beautiful.
Okay, last plug, Ruth. You can also check out a documentary film online that was done in Ferguson, Missouri, from somebody that lives in this particular neighborhood, and it's called Hands Up, Don't Shoot Our Youth Movement. And that was maybe a precursor to what we see here in Minneapolis. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day. All right, so this is real quick, just 3 questions. Feel free to answer them as briefly or as detailed as you want.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for sharing your experience. I will not ask your name or any other personal information. Do you give me permission to record and publish this interview?
Yes, sir.
Sweet. My first question is, what has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both positive and negative?
First time I saw the video, I was heartbroken. I was angry. I was at a loss of words. All I could think about was these officers are probably going to get away with doing what they just did. And the second thing I thought was, we can't let that happen. So I was out there ever since the first night it happened. I was out there on the front lines just documenting what was going on, just being a part of it. I didn't loot at all, but I'm not a proponent of looting, but I'm not gonna say I'm angry it happened. I feel like it had to happen for America to actually pay attention to what's going on with police brutality and racism. The only way they're gonna listen to us is if we get in their pockets.
Sweet. You don't have to worry about craning your neck. This thing's pretty strong. My second question would be, what specifically are you fighting to see change during these protests?
I would like to see police take accountability for their actions. I would like to see justice. I would like to see equality. I would like to see people of all races being treated the exact same when it comes to policing in our community, in our country.
And that's a great segue into my last question, which would be, what would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about the protest here in our cities?
I want them to know that a lot of this destruction did not come from the people that are in this city. A lot of this destruction came from people that came from out of town. You heard what the president said. Like most of it is not people that were in Minneapolis or part of Minnesota. Obviously, I wouldn't advise to listen to our president, but what he said there was actually correct. There a lot of the looting, a lot of the fires, arson, it happened not from people from here. And we love our community, we love our city, and it's not an accurate representation of who we are.
All right, first off, thank you for sharing your experience. I will not ask your name or any other personal information. Do you give me permission to record our interview?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, my first question is, what has been your experience with the protest following the death of George Floyd, both positive and negative?
positive. I'll go positive first. Positive is we are now getting noticed. People are now hearing us as the black community, because black lives do matter. I think people need to come together and really see what's going on and really notice that we are treated not fair. And it's time for a change, and we need to make that change. Negative, I would say. There's some people out here that's really peaceful, and people are getting shot with rubber bullets, and they're doing critical damage to some people, and some people even die from it.
Beautifully put, thank you. And I'm just going to ask you the same question. Would you like me to repeat it? Yeah. All right, oops. What has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both positive and negative?
Well, this is my first day out here. I'll be kind of busy with other issues and stuff like that. But I feel like it's positive that we're all out here and paying our respects to those lives that has been lost. I feel like, with all this protest, that's why we got justice for George Floyd and stuff like that. But I feel like the only negative thing about this is the police is really just trying to destroy the protests and people trying to make change and stuff like that, which is not really right. But we should have justice for everybody's life that has been lost as well. But, unfortunately, we probably won't get it just because of the way the justice system is. But I just hope for the best, and I hope that we all just get justice and we all just continue to change and do better things like that.
Thank you. Okay, my next question is, what specifically are you fighting to see change during these protests?
For one, police violence. Violence within black men and black women need to stop. A lot of these people that's arrested with hands behind their back are still being beaten, being hit, being choked, and a lot of people continually say, "I can't breathe," but police don't care about it. So that needs to stop, because it's taking a lot of lives, and we had enough.
Beautiful. Same question to you. What specifically are you fighting to see change during these protests?
I'm just really just fighting for everybody to just have a fair chance at justice, and everybody should be treated right. Everybody should be treated equally. Police should stop just abusing us black people, especially just for not doing anything at all, or just pretty much just killing us for no apparent reason. Everybody should just fight and just just try to stop that from happening, stuff like that. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, this is my last question, and that is, what would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about the protests going on in our cities right now?
I just want to say that we're out here really trying to put a word out on what's going on, and we want to get noticed, and we want other states to take note of that, and also do the same. So every state gets heard. And with that being said, when we all speak out about it, we're gonna get heard. And once we get heard, things are gonna change.
Thank you. Same question to you. What would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul about what's going on in our cities right now with these protests?
I would like to say everybody should keep using your voice, keep using your platforms that you have, Facebook, Instagram. Keep sharing the evil things that's going around, and just open your eyes, and just everybody just stay safe. And yeah, that's all we got to say.
Beautifully put, guys. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. All right, again, this is completely candid. It's just audio. So first of all, thank you for sharing your experience. I will not ask you any personal information. Do you give me permission to record and publish this interview?
I do.
Beautiful. My first question is, what has been your experience with the protests following the death of George Floyd, both good and bad?
Well, the bad about it is that people have taken this opportunity to loot and steal and try to take over the city, which I think is awful. But the good side of it is what you see right now, how Minnesota came together all different races and colors and creeds, and we are putting it back together. I like that part about it. Absolutely. You know, just the unity that it has created. And I think it's bringing us closer. So that's the good part. The bad part is this stuff that's going on. You know, the community, they have to protect their own neighborhoods right now, and that's awful. I had to take food to one of the girls that is patrolling the neighborhood last night. I live in Brooklyn Park. I drove all the way here to bring her a hot meal so she could, you know, finish up her part of the night. Yeah, it's rough. So I just, you know, that's all I have to say about that.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I appreciate you driving as far as you did to come out here and be a part of that. My second question would be, what specifically are you fighting to see change while protesting?
Well, we want the police department to change. We want changes there, and hopefully when that happens, things could be a little bit smoother around here. So definitely with the police department.
Okay. And my last question would be, what would you like to tell people outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul or even the metro area about what's going on here with these protests?
Well, like I've been on live and I tell them, I said, yeah, it was, you know, a really bad thing that happened, and hopefully we'll get it together, but look at the unity that's going on right now. Like, it's good. I think George would be happy to see this, you know, despite that he had to lose his life for it, because we should be like this anyway, which I think Minnesota is like this, but this brought it more to the forefront. So, yeah, I think that's about it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I really do appreciate your insights.